The studio lights burned brighter than usual that night. It wasn't just another political discussion on cable television, it felt like a cultural standoff, an intellectual duel framed as entertainment. Jessica Tarlov, known for her sharp commentary and quick temper, sat across from Denzel Washington, the Hollywood legend who had long transcended cinema to become a symbol of moral clarity and composure. The air between them vibrated with tension. What began as a civil exchange about leadership and accountability shifted when Jessica's tone hardened. Her smile thinned, her words became edged. "You talk about discipline, Denzel," she said, voice calm but cutting, "but you act like a psycho whenever someone questions your version of the truth." The word hung there, psycho, echoing through the silence. The audience froze, unsure if they had just witnessed a moment of career suicide or television gold. Denzel didn't blink. His eyes, calm, piercing, locked on Jessica. He leaned forward slightly, not to intimidate, but to focus. And when he spoke, his tone was deliberate, measured, the kind of voice that could silence a room full of chaos. "If passion for integrity makes me a psycho, then maybe sanity isn't what this country needs right now." The crowd erupted. The host tried to move on, but the balance of power had already shifted. Jessica's confidence cracked, her eyes darted toward the camera, realizing she had become the story. Within hours, the clip exploded online. #Denzel vs. Jessica trended globally. Analysts dissected every word, influencers turned it into memes, and political commentators couldn't decide if it was theater or truth. But what no one understood yet, what the world would learn in the days to come, was that this confrontation wasn't about a single insult. It was the spark that would ignite a nationwide conversation about respect, restraint, and what it really means to lose control. By sunrise, the clip had already become the most replayed moment on social media. Every major outlet had a headline, "Jessica Tarlov calls Denzel a psycho," and instantly regrets it. Networks looped the exchange every 15 minutes, cutting to pundits arguing over who was right and who had crossed the line. The tone was unmistakable, the country was split, again. Jessica woke up to over 40,000 mentions on X, most of them brutal. "Who calls Denzel Washington a psycho?" one post read. "That's like calling gravity a rumor." Others defended her, insisting that celebrities shouldn't be untouchable. But no one could deny what the world had seen: composure versus chaos, grace versus aggression. At a coffee shop in Los Angeles, Denzel sat quietly with his phone face down. His publicist had already called 3 times. "It's blowing up," she said, voice trembling with both excitement and panic. CNN wants a statement. Fox too. Everyone's framing this as Denzel's moment. But Denzel wasn't interested in victory laps. He sipped his coffee, watching a muted TV in the corner replay his own face, calm, unshaken, across the ticker that screamed his name. "All I did was stay calm," he murmured. "And somehow that's headline news." Meanwhile, in New York, Jessica's network scrambled to control the fire. Producers held emergency meetings, debating whether to issue a statement or double down. Inside her dressing room, Jessica sat under the glow of her vanity mirror, makeup untouched, phone buzzing non-stop. "He made me look like a villain," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "And I handed him the weapon." What she didn't realize, what no one did, was that Denzel's quiet restraint was about to set off something far bigger. This wasn't just a viral clip anymore. It was becoming a mirror for the nation's mood, a reminder that in a world addicted to outrage, silence could still be the loudest voice. Within 24 hours, the country was divided cleanly in two. On one side were those who saw Denzel's composure as a masterclass in grace under pressure, the ultimate calm amidst chaos. On the other were those who argued Jessica had simply spoken her mind, in a space designed for heated debate. But behind every hashtag and headline, something deeper was stirring. News anchors dissected the exchange frame by frame. Analysts slowed down Denzel's reaction, reading meaning into every blink and pause. "Notice how he never raises his voice," one commentator said. "That's not weakness. That's control. In contrast, Jessica's defenders flooded the airwaves claiming she had been provoked by Hollywood hypocrisy. Overnight, think pieces appeared: Denzel and the Art of Silent Power, Jessica Tarlov and the Double Standard of Outrage. Even politicians chimed in, opportunists sensing the culture war oxygen. By day 2, the White House press secretary was asked about it during a briefing. She smiled politely. "We don't comment on television debates," she said, and then added, "but I think everyone appreciates when people handle themselves with dignity." That single line hit like a signal flare. Clips of Denzel's measured response were now playing alongside historic speeches and moments of restraint in leadership. It was no longer about television, it was about temperament, about what kind of people America still wanted to admire. Meanwhile, Jessica's inbox filled with both hate and pity. She told her producer, "It's like I punched a wall and the wall smiled back." He didn't disagree. Sponsors began to whisper about image management. An apology segment was floated. And yet, the more she tried to explain herself, the worse it got, because the internet had already made up its mind. Denzel hadn't just won the argument, he'd rewritten the rules of how one was supposed to be fought. By the third day, the real battle had shifted behind the cameras. Inside the network headquarters, executives filled a long glass conference room, tension thick as smoke. Screens on the wall replayed the viral clip in silence while PR strategists argued in circles. "We can't fire her," one producer said flatly. "That would make Denzel look like the victim, and we can't hand him that narrative." Jessica sat outside the room, arms folded, face pale beneath layers of studio makeup. She wasn't used to being the story. "They're treating me like I started a war," she whispered to her assistant. The truth was, she kind of had. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, Denzel refused every interview request. His team was frustrated. Networks were offering primetime specials, late-night cameos, million-dollar sponsorships. "This is your moment," his publicist insisted. "Everyone's talking about your composure, your values. Use it." But Denzel shook his head. "It's not a brand," he said. "It's a moment of truth. If I turn it into a circus, I become part of the noise." Instead, he disappeared from the spotlight. No statements, no appearances. That silence only made the story grow. Commentators filled the void with theories: Denzel planning major statement? Jessica facing suspension? The lack of answers became its own headline. In a private dinner that week, two rival anchors debated the fallout. "She underestimated him," one said. "You don't go after Denzel unless you're ready for what follows." The other replied quietly, "It wasn't his fame that beat her, it was his restraint." But what neither of them realized was that Denzel's silence wasn't avoidance, it was strategy. He knew the story wasn't finished. The storm hadn't peaked yet, and when it did, the truth about that night's outburst would shake more than just television ratings. It began with a whisper, a producer's assistant talking too loud at a downtown bar. By morning, a small political blog had published an explosive claim. There were unaired moments from the live show, footage that had been cut before broadcast. Within hours, the hashtag the missing footage was trending. The video appeared just after noon. It wasn't long, maybe 20 seconds, but it changed everything. It showed Jessica muttering under her breath moments before calling Denzel a psycho. Her words were faint but clear enough: "Let's see if Mr. Perfect loses his cool." Suddenly, the narrative flipped. What had been a spontaneous exchange now looked premeditated, a deliberate attempt to provoke. Major outlets ran with it instantly. "Tarlov tried to trap Denzel," read the headlines. Editorial panels erupted. It wasn't just television drama anymore. It had become a case study in manipulation, in what people were willing to risk for attention. Inside the network, panic spread. Legal teams huddled. Publicists ghostwrote apologies before Jessica had even seen them. "You've got to fix this now," her producer warned. "You either apologize or they'll burn you online." Jessica stared at the leaked clip, face drained of color. "It was supposed to be debate," she said quietly, "not a witch hunt." But no one cared about intentions anymore, only optics. Meanwhile, Denzel's team watched in silence. His assistant asked, "Do you want to respond?" Denzel shook his head again. "No need," he said. "Truth speaks louder when you let everyone else shout first." And he was right. His calm, once mocked as detachment, now looked prophetic. By evening, his quote was everywhere. "Integrity doesn't need volume, it just needs time." That single sentence went viral again, reigniting a wave of admiration and deepening the mystery around him. What would he do next? Why was he so quiet? America was watching, waiting, and the tension was only building. By Friday morning, the internet had turned ruthless. Comment sections filled with one-sided fury. Jessica Tarlov's name trended next to words like unprofessional, calculated, and cancel her. People who had never watched her show were now dissecting her tone, her body language, her smirk. She'd become a symbol, not of debate, but of arrogance. The network tried damage control. They released a brief statement about valuing all perspectives, but it only made things worse. Denzel's fans flooded their official pages, all perspectives? Including disrespect? Advertisers began to call quietly, not pulling out yet, but asking questions. The kind that meant they were thinking about it. Behind the scenes, Jessica begged her team to let her explain. "Let me apologize on air," she said. Not a tweet. Face to face. But PR said no. If you apologize, you admit guilt. If you stay quiet, the story dies faster. They were wrong. Silence didn't kill the story, it fed it. Meanwhile, Denzel was spotted at a youth center in Compton, teaching kids about film and discipline. No cameras, no press. Still, a cell phone video leaked, him telling a boy, "Never let anger write your story." That clip became the new headline. While Tarlov hides, Denzel teaches grace. Even Jessica's colleagues began to distance themselves. On air, one co-host said, "We all lose our cool sometimes, but some people do it in front of millions." The audience laughed, and Jessica watched the replay in her office, jaw tight, eyes burning. That weekend, one of the network's top executives called Denzel's manager. "We'd like to have him back for a discussion, a healing conversation." Denzel's response was short: "Healing doesn't happen for ratings." By Sunday night, her career, once thriving, was hanging by a thread. The storm she'd started had turned inward. And somewhere deep down, even Jessica knew, this wasn't about Denzel anymore. It was about who America chose to listen to when the noise got too loud. By Monday, Jessica Tarlov looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. The network had sent her home for a few days of rest, but everyone knew it was a soft suspension. Her apartment was dark except for the cold light of the TV replaying her own face, frozen mid-sneer, the exact second she'd said, "psycho." She muted the sound but couldn't escape the echo in her head. Her phone vibrated non-stop, messages from friends, critics, and strangers alike. Some offered sympathy, most didn't. She scrolled through headlines: Tarlov under fire for unprovoked attack, Denzel's silence speaks volumes. Each one was a dagger dressed as journalism. Then came an unexpected message. It wasn't from her team, or from the network, but from one of Denzel's producers, the same young assistant who had walked him off set that night. "Mr. Washington wanted me to tell you something," it read. "He said, the moment you stop defending the mistake, you start learning from it. That's all." Jessica stared at the message, reading it over and over. No judgment. No mockery. Just clarity. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a door, slightly open. For the first time, she replayed the full broadcast, not as a pundit, but as a viewer. She watched herself cutting him off, forcing a reaction, searching for a viral moment. The look in his eyes when he didn't give her what she wanted, that was the part that broke her. She picked up her phone, opened a new post, and typed, "I said something I shouldn't have. I thought being loud meant being right. I was wrong. She hit send before she could change her mind. Within an hour, the post had millions of views. Half the responses were brutal, but the other half, the quiet ones, said things like, "Respect for owning it." And then, unexpectedly, a single like appeared from Denzel's verified account. The tide hadn't turned yet, but the wind had shifted. For the first time in a week, Jessica took a deep breath that didn't feel like punishment. The network saw the moment coming before Jessica did. Her apology had softened public anger, but what people wanted now was closure, not through statements, but through faces. The producer pitched it like a redemption special, a calm conversation, live, moderated, Denzel and Jessica, one-on-one. At first, both sides said no. But 2 days later, Denzel changed his mind. Not for ratings, not for spectacle. If the lesson's already public, he told his team, the reconciliation should be too. The night of the meeting, the studio lights felt different, lower, warmer, almost intimate. There was no live audience, just 2 chairs and 1 camera. Jessica walked in first, visibly nervous. Denzel entered moments later, calm, hands clasped, every inch the steady presence that had defined him throughout the storm. When the camera rolled, there were no introductions, no scripts. Just silence, and then Jessica spoke first. "I said something cruel," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought I was winning an argument, but really, I was losing perspective." Denzel nodded once, slowly. "Everyone loses their footing sometimes," he said. "The test is whether you stand up differently after." The moment hung in the air, quiet, raw, and real. No applause. No viral punchline. Just 2 people choosing accountability over ego. For the first time, Jessica looked at him without the armor of television. "How did you stay calm?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Because anger feeds the fire. And I've seen what burns when you let it." The broadcast ended not with a headline, but with a handshake. And that image, 2 people once divided by pride, now united in reflection, traveled faster than any insult ever had. That night, the clip didn't trend for outrage, but for something rare, grace. The broadcast ended, but its echo carried far beyond the studio walls. Within hours, clips of the meeting flooded social media, not the way viral conflicts usually do, but with a rare calmness. People weren't sharing outrage this time, they were sharing relief. The headline wasn't "Explosion on Live TV," but "A Conversation America Needed." Editorials poured in. One columnist wrote, "It wasn't just reconciliation. It was a reminder that decency still has currency." Another said, "Denzel didn't win an argument. He won the moment." Even late-night hosts, who lived off sarcasm, spoke with surprising sincerity, "Maybe we should all take a page out of that man's book." Inside schools, debate coaches played the clip for students. "Watch his tone," one said. "Notice how he pauses before speaking. That's control, not silence." In workplaces, HR teams circulated the video during conflict resolution training. The message spread organically, a cultural mirror held up to a country exhausted by noise. For Denzel, it was never about image. When a reporter caught him outside a community center a week later and asked if he'd forgiven Jessica, he just smiled. "Forgiveness isn't something you perform," he said. "It's something you live." As for Jessica, her second appearance back on the show was quiet, measured, the kind that made viewers lean in instead of scroll past. The world hadn't forgotten, but it had moved differently now, a little slower, a little softer. In a rare twist for modern media, the story didn't fade with scandal or fury. It settled into something more lasting, a shared sense that maybe, just maybe, dignity still had a place on live television. Months later, the world had moved on, at least, that's what the headline suggested. New scandals, new soundbites, new wars of words filled the airwaves. Yet, somewhere beneath the noise, that one conversation between Denzel and Jessica remained, not in the trending section, but in memory. Clips still surfaced quietly on TikTok edits about emotional maturity, in motivational reels about composure, in classrooms where teachers played it as an example of what listening looks like. The quote had taken on a life of its own. Anger feeds the fire. I've seen what burns when you let it. It appeared on posters, coffee mugs, even on a mural in Atlanta, Denzel's face beside the words, "Grace under fire." Jessica, meanwhile, had rebuilt herself, not through rebranding, but through humility. Her new show opened every episode with an unscripted segment called Before We Speak, where she and her guests reflected briefly before debating. It wasn't about theatrics anymore. It was about tone, truth, and presence, the very things she once underestimated. In a quiet interview months later, she said, "I thought power was in being the loudest. Turns out, power is being unshakable." Denzel didn't respond publicly. He didn't have to. The lesson had already traveled farther than he ever could. And that was the legacy, not a viral victory, not another televised feud, but a cultural reminder that in an age addicted to outrage, silence can still roar louder than noise. Because when words lose their weight, grace becomes the loudest language left. Moments like this remind us, real strength isn't loud, and grace never goes out of style. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might need the reminder today. Don't forget to subscribe, because here, every story reflects something real.